Welcome to Tom Girl, where we talk all things sports, entertainment, fashion, and adventure. Today's guest is entrepreneur and adventurer Jolene Bibian. She is the founder of Mills and Maple Insurance Solution, and when she's not running her own business, she's outside adventuring. In this episode, she'll talk about how she's combining her work and adventure and tell us what it's like at some of the greatest outdoor adventure events like the Baja 1000 and King of the Hammers. She's also currently training for the Rebelle Rally, the first women's off-road navigation rally in the U.S. Welcome to the show, Jolene.
Thank you so much. I had a bubble in my throat. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. JJ, this has been in the makes for I don't know how long.
I know. We met years ago you were working for the Bold and the Beautiful, and they were having one of their anniversary parties, and we met there, and we just hit it off right away, Yeah,
it's actually, I don't know if I can tell the story, but it's actually a funny story because, and I just told it today with a girlfriend, but so when I saw you, I thought you were someone completely different. And it was like a situation that happened at a previous anniversary party. And so I go up to you and I do this thing with our top buns, and you're like, that wasn't me. And I was like, oh, okay. But it turned out to be the perfect connection. Because from there on, we were totally connected through social media, and here we are today. So yeah, it was super cool.
I know, it was great because we never knew each other before, both working for the same show. We just weren't in the same areas of the building and everything, or you probably off site. So yeah, it was so fun. And then I've of course just followed you ever since then on social media, and you're just doing all these amazing adventures, and I just love it. I just love everything that I can't wait to get her on this show because I want to pick your brain about all these awesome events you go to and how you make it all happen. And I want to first start talking about your business, because when I met you were, like I said, working with the Bold and the Beautiful, and then you've since then now started your own business and you're off on your own. So kind of tell me about your professional journey and how you've kind of landed where you are now.
Yeah, so it's interesting because obviously I'm in the insurance world, which is not sexy. It's not something that someone just wakes up and wants to pursue. But I, through the Bold and the Beautiful, so we actually managed their benefit package for the admin and the production staff. And through that time, I was actually working for someone else. So he brought me on as partner. I'm going to give you the really short version of it because it's a really long story. But I started working with him when I was actually in high school. And so through the years and just kind of learning the business and him mentoring me, which was beautiful. Bold and the Beautiful was actually, still is one of my longtime clients. And so I got to actually learn through them, standing up and giving presentations and they're my family now. So my business partner at the time, he needed to retire a little bit early. And through the course of going through the motions of getting pitches from bigger companies, I learned hey, I don't want to work for someone else. I want my own company. I want the freedom. It wasn't about the money. It was about the freedom, because at that point I was already adventuring and wanting to get out there and explore the world. And so one day I came home, I had a contract from one of the guys that wanted to buy our company. And I told my husband, I said, I really don't want to work for these people. I'm not going to say any names and I don't want to work for anybody else. And, here's the contract, yada, yada, yada. He actually helped me go through the contract. And he's I was literally sitting on the bed in my underwear, tank top, and we're going through it. And he's like, Jolene, you could buy the company. You could buy this company and make it your own. And I was like, So from there, it just was this super hard, really gnarly experience of buying a company and then relaunching it on my own. So I started Mills and Maple in 2019, which was only literally 1 year right before the pandemic. So right as I was getting my feet off the ground, the pandemic hits, which was a whole whirlwind, right? Yeah. But through it all, it was interesting because, like I said, I had already had this bug for adventure, right? And there's so much that you learn from being just out there in the middle of nowhere. that, nobody to help you. You're kind of on your own, nobody to lean on. And there's so many times where I'm like, oh my God, I can do this. Like, I know what this feels like, just in a different context, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's been a beautiful journey, but I'm really fortunate to be able to weave into my company my love for the outdoors, obviously. I mean,
I said you win for the most perfect like background and office. It's gorgeous. I love the neon sign in the back. But yeah, and I think that for someone that doesn't know a lot about your industry too, I just from the outside really appreciate that I look at your page and your website and I'm like, this looks inviting. And but like my adventure spirit is like, okay, yeah, I want benefits from her. Okay.
right? Yeah.
And I love how you weave that in there.
I think at the end of the day, like no matter what industry you're in, people, the end user, whoever that is, wants a human experience, right? You could be like the most successful, CEO of this huge corporation, but when you sit across from someone, you want a human experience, especially when it's something personal like health insurance or, life insurance. Like there's some gnarly situations that people go through, especially in our healthcare industry, just dealing with the system in general, when you're already not feeling well or going through something super heavy, that you need someone that's like, hey, look, I got you. I've been through stuff too. We're human and we're going to help you through it. And I think it really resonates with a lot of people.
So now who are your clients primarily, or who do you work with and what do you do for them?
So generally, I would say 90% of my clients are in the entertainment business. So we work predominantly with production companies, business managers, so people that work directly with like producers and TV, movie, things like that. So not only is it, insurance on its own, but insurance with like really cool people. I mean, creatives, it's super cool. Yeah.
And what are some of the things that along this journey of like from saying, okay, I'm going to buy this business? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, how did you go about this? What are things you learned? What are tips? What are things you would tell people to avoid?
Well, so I did not go to school for business, right? Like I literally straight out of high school started in this industry. So I did go to community college, obviously. And, you learn your basics, but all of a sudden you cannonball into this huge situation. And I kind of had to learn like dog pedal along the way. Again, leaning on my like own personal, like I really rely on myself. It's kind of unique. A lot of like, I know I'm fortunate in the way that I really rely on myself and I trust myself, which comes from a lot of the situations that I've fallen into, quite literally, right? But like there was a time where I can remember it was like 3 months in. You're signing contracts, you don't have anybody really to lean on. You're just kind of figuring it out and trusting that what you're doing, right? Because fundamentally and at your core, you already have the capability to do it. And I remember I have a gal that handles like all my operations. She came in and she's like, so it was all about money, right? And I was like, why did I do this? Oh my God, like I just can't do it. And she's like, stop, come back to center, like just breathe. And I think circling back to, I think I've built up this internal resilience from just being out in the middle of nowhere, being on a trail that maybe, for example, like one of my biggest, I would say, adventures that I really overcame a lot internally was climbing Half Dome. So I can remember literally being on the side of, you're on like this big granite. I just wanted to stop. I wanted to quit. I was like, this is too hard. It's, what am I doing up here? I can like fall to my death or, I start crying, hyperventilating, like completely losing my shit, and I was like, oh. And then I turn around, my husband's right behind me and he's like, you got this. Like, you're almost there. Like, literally, if you stop right now, you're going to be so mad at yourself. And I was like, oh, okay, I got this. And it just got really quiet. And I was like, seriously, like, what? Like, of course I do, and I got up to the top and I was just like, so proud of myself. And like, oh, and it's those moments where you lean on in business, or I lean on. And I think it's something that I want to kind of instill in other people, that, getting out there and just doing hard things remind you in like your business or your company or work that you can really do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great story. I love that adventuring teaches us things like that, or, puts us in those moments. Yeah. So let's get into the adventure a little bit. Is there anything more you want to think about your business or anything?
No, I'm super passionate about it. I think just one thing that I will say is, you don't have to have two separate lives. I think what I've really made it a point to do when I started Mills and Maple was to weave in that passion and that like adventurous spirit and not to lose it. So no matter what I'm doing, so just because it's insurance doesn't mean, I can't meet clients on the trail. I go walking with them and, or I tell them stories, or like I'm always circling it back to that so that I'm constantly weaving them both together, if that makes sense. Instead of like, oh, I'm at work. Oh, I'm outside. It's like, I can actually do it all,
Yeah. Yeah. And make you enjoy both of them probably even more, together. Yeah. Well, you were also a little bit ahead of your time with the pandemic, where during the pandemic, a lot of people were, quitting their jobs and wanting to find the balance like you kind of were looking for before, when you said you didn't want to work for somebody, you wanted to be on your own, have control, have your freedom, so I think a lot of people listening you might give them the courage to go after it.
Totally. And I think that, we think all of a sudden that we're in a box, so like work nowadays, especially, and I think it's a beautiful thing that all of a sudden employers are realizing, hey, a lot of what you're doing here in the office for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, you can do from anywhere. Right. And I think that's one really silver lining that we've kind of overcome through the pandemic is like, life is about living. You're not meant to be crammed into a dark office for most of your life and just, wishing that you could be out there and exploring. Like you can actually do both. Like one of my goals, which it's still kind of one of those goals that, sometimes you have to keep moving them forward. But eventually I want to create, whether it's a sprinter or some type of nice mobile office, and have it be like off-road capable, Wi-Fi secure, and get to literally go wherever I want and have an office and, have like just open up the back, have like some beautiful red rock behind me, be on Zoom, and like also inspire other people, right? So when you're talking with clients, it's like, I could be like, oh yeah, your deductible is, $1,200. I could be like, hey, guess what? I'm in this beautiful place. And, if you really spent time doing things that you love, I think it does affect your health, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
In a better place, just mentally. I mean, we all go through really heavy stuff all the time. And the outdoors have like saved me like constantly.
Oh, it's amazing how therapeutic and just how great it is for your soul. You're saying it's like, when you're working hours upon hours, like our society, like teaches all like, that's the right thing to do. Right. That's we gotta work. We gotta make money. We gotta elevate in a company or so. But it's like, wait, no, there's so much to life and so much out there to see. And it's like hard to see that on your 2 weeks vacation or whatever you get from your day job.
Right. And I think teaching other people too also teaches them that it's okay to have boundaries. So like, I will tell my clients like, hey, Friday, I'm off the grid, I'm going to be in Baja. And they're like, oh my God, tell us about it when you get back, and it's like this really cool synergy between me kind of, and I've had clients tell me like, hey, you kind of inspired me to like let loose a little bit and, create balance in my life. Cause I was working until 8:00 at night and I could just, create those boundaries because we think we have to satisfy other people's needs always. I'm not saying that, your job or your career or your business shouldn't be a priority, but also your life should be. Like, you don't want to be 80 years old, look back and be like, oh, cool, I sat at a desk all my life and didn't take hold of that,
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. Preaching to the choir.
I'm still like living through you because I'm like, oh, she's got it down. I gotta get on board. Remember, I'm like, Jolene, can I be a third wheel?
Yeah. I know some of my friends are like, hey, can you adopt me? But, I'm like, yeah, but there's a lot of work that goes behind it, right? Like, you've got to be willing to work for it too.
Yeah. So let's talk about like some of your best adventures. I know you have some great toys. Let's start with some of your favorite adventures you've been on.
Okay. I think, so one thing I did want to share. So obviously a lifestyle, when you create like a habit or a lifestyle, it doesn't just happen overnight, right? You're like not all of a sudden like doing all these things. It takes time, and it takes some acclimation, and like whether you have an adventure buddy or your spouse or your friend. So I have a really cool story that I think kind of set like the whole tone for all of this, and it gave us the bug. So um it was 2016, I think, and my husband had gifted me a GoPro. And he's like, hey, I got this GoPro. I think it'd be really fun. Because we would do like little things here and there, but nothing like too crazy. And I was like, cool. And so it was President's Weekend, or President's Day weekend, which is Valentine's Day weekend. It kind of like overlapped. And like, it was like a Thursday or Friday. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But it was like leading up to the weekend. He's like, hey, what if we go to Sedona? And I had just gotten the Jeep around that time, my first Jeep. And I'm like, okay. And then we had no plans. We had we had one sleeping bag, a Jeep, a pillow, melatonin, wine, and PB&Js. And we like hit the road, 3, 4 in the morning. The sun hadn't come up yet. We had our GoPro. And on the way there, I was like mapping out. I was like, okay, we had our iPad, and I was like mapping out kind of where we were going to end up, what we were going to do, where we were going to stay. And it was President's Day weekend, so no hotels. So like we had to stay in the Jeep, which we already kind of anticipated. We're like, okay, cool. So I mapped out, and it's Schnibley Road in Sedona. It's this really rocky road that goes all the way down into the city from the top, from like Coco Nino National Park. Goes down. So I was like, oh, cool. And mind you, I don't know anything about this area yet, right? I'm kind of like, oh, this sounds good. I'm looking up on like different online forums and, all the things leading into when we're driving to Arizona. And so my husband, Junior, he's like, yeah, that sounds cool. That sounds cool. I was like, yeah, so there's this little spot and it's like open land. We can kind of park there, camp overnight. He's like, okay, cool. All right, so that's a long drive, okay? And it's February, so it's cold. We get there, our plan, that road was shut down. And I was like, and it's already dark by the time we get there, because we did a U-turn. I mean, we did a detour to the Grand Canyon, of course, which I'm all about detours. Like, I mean, you find the coolest things when you're like detoured, lost, and you just kind of get into it. But so we get there, road is closed, and I was like, oh crap. Okay, so and it's getting late now. And we're like, let's just, and I was kind of getting antsy, because you get this like, oh my God, like what's gonna happen? Where are we gonna stay? Are we gonna be homeless? Like your life's gonna end at that moment. And then my husband, oh my God, bless him, he's like such an even, like he does not deviate. He's just like, it's cool, we're fine. Let's just go have some pizza. So we had pizza. Probably some beers. And then I was asking, we were like walking through the little town. If you've been to Sedona, it's like a really nice little, super cool town. And there was this guy and he's like, hey, do you guys want to do a helicopter tour tomorrow? And I'm like, no. And I was like, hey, actually, can you tell us where we can park just like an open land and camp? And he's like, oh yeah. So he hand draws us this like super sketchy map, right? And I'm like, okay, we're going to try to read this, but he had like really big landmarks on it. And he's like, yeah, just get there, just keep driving. He's like, if you think you've driven too far, keep going. And I was like, okay. We follow the map, and we get to this super sketchy area, pitch dark, there's nobody there. It was way too far off this like little beaten path. Freezing. It must have been like at least 30 degrees, which when you're in a Jeep, so it's like no insulation. You're out there. It's as close as you could get to camping without actually camping. One sleeping bag, remember? So we have that one sleeping bag over us, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so cold. My husband's like, just keep drinking your wine. And we took the melatonin, of course. That's like a given when you're camping. Tip number one. So anyway, we wake up in the morning and it was outrageous. I mean, middle of nowhere, nobody's around us. It's dry camping, primitive. So there's no services. It's just public land, beautiful red rocks. And I was like, oh, that was so worth that anxiety of like not knowing what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And from there, ever since then, we've been like, cool. And we actually kind of leaned on that, just kind of picking up and going spirit. And it's really served us well, like for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. What a way to roll with it. Yeah. Cause if you had panicked and left, you never would have woke up and gotten that amazing view and experience.
Right. Or if we just like gave in and we're like, oh, let's just try to get a really expensive hotel, or like, because a lot of people would do that. A lot of people would be like, oh my God, this is too much. Like, I don't know where I'm at. I kind of lean into that. So at first, of course, getting that anxious, I'm not always just a totally like chill person. I'm always like, wow, what can happen? Because I'm a very internal processor. So I'm like constantly weighing like the risk and reward here. And thankfully my adventure buddy is my husband, and he's like, we're fine, we're safe. We have what we need. Worst case scenario, we always have a worst case scenario, which could be a Walmart parking lot. There's always a worst case, but I would say 9 times out of 10, it's been the best case scenario if you just kind of lean into it.
Yeah. How great that you guys have found that is you're able to do that together and go on these adventures.
It really is. Yeah. And I know that's like a big gift, of course. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about some of the others. Now, I want to hear, I've always wanted to go to the Baja 1000. So I want to hear about that and the King of the Hammers.
Okay. So Baja 1000 was actually my introduction to going to these off-road races, which again, I'm kind of an addictive person. I guess you're going to find this like there's going to be a commonality in these stories, but if I experience something and it like sets a fire in me, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I want more, So one year our friend invited us. So we had been to Baja a few times, right? Like I'm very comfortable in Mexico. I love it. My husband is Mexican, so he speaks Spanish. So I have that like luxury of having someone that's fluent in Spanish. So it's like a really good dynamic. So one year our friend was like, hey, our buddy's going to be in the race. So he was going to be racing a spec truck, and they were going to go down there all together. And they're like, hey, do you guys want to go? And my husband's like, yes, because he has followed, Baja racing forever. And I was like, I don't know. Like, first of all, November is like fourth quarter. It is my most heavy time of year. I'm like working 12 hours a day because I do work really hard when I'm not adventuring. Let's, get that straight. And then he's like, no, but I think it'll be worth it. Like you can work on the road. And then, at that time I didn't have international. So I like cut off right when we hit the border. So we go down there for this race, right? And we end up following it with our friends through like some sketchy off-road, like, streets and the back roads down to Valley of Trinidad. And this whole time I'm like, I have this like giddy excitement in me. Like I'm, 10 years old again, like on the back of like somebody's bike, just like, oh my God. Literally there's pictures out there of me like sticking my head out the window down like these one lane highways. And I was like, this is so rad, because the difference between going to a race here in the States, like King of the Hammers, versus going to these in Baja, there's very little rules in Baja as far as like the spectators. Here you have like 2 areas that you could go, and you have to be like 1,000 feet from like the actual race, the raceway. There you can literally, some people do it and I don't advise it, but you can like lay on the dirt road and they will like go over you. Don't do that. I would not advise it. Like don't. but there's some locals that will just do crazy things, right? So this like super excited feeling, I'm like, wow, these trucks are just like jamming past us at like 100 miles an hour off-road, like jumping. And you're in Baja, like what better way? You're eating the best fish, drinking, great beer, having nice tequila shots. Like it was like the most fun I'd had in so long. And going back to like, it was a moment where I was like, you know what? I almost didn't do this because of my inbox or of all these things that I had to get done, which are still going to be there for me Monday, And after that, I was just like, oh yeah. So we've actually, after the Baja 1000, just my husband and I have been going back for almost all the races.
Have you always been into racing, or did you grow up liking that kind of those events, or did you just get into it now?
I did grow up kind of like, similar to, I grew up kind of a tomboy. Like I did all the fishing, I camped. I loved being in the outdoors. I loved like the smell of just like the quietness, that like feeling, but I don't think I ever got into like off-road racing, motorcycles, none of that until probably like in the past 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you have your own bike too, right? I know you mountain bike, but you have a motorcycle as well, don't you?
I do. So I have a Ducati Cafe Racer, which is like my baby. Excuse me, she's kind of sad right now because of just so much going on and so many other options. I haven't ridden for a while, so the battery died, which is just heartbreaking. But yeah, it's interesting. So the motorcycle was something that my husband he had ridden motorcycles before. He's had them, and he always wanted me to get on the back of his motorcycle, right? And I'm like, hell no. Like, I don't trust, I have such a trust. Like, I want to be in control. If I'm not in control, I mean, you should see me on an airplane. I'm not flying the plane. I don't trust anybody. So I never got on the back of it. And flash forward, he ended up getting a new motorcycle. So he ended up getting a Ducati as well. And this new Cafe Racer was coming out. And he's like, Joe, which most people call me Joe, this is the bike for you, right? And I was like, it is. It's definitely a bike for me. Like, it totally is. So, and then simultaneously, like around that same time, I had 2 other girlfriends, and we wanted to start like this motorcycle gang, right? None of us had license yet. Like, but through that, like, powerful, like, in exchange with my girlfriends, we ended up doing, so in Camarillo at the airport, they used to do this like training class. So you could go there, learn from a professional how to ride a motorcycle, before you got your license. And it helped you get your license because it was through the CHP. So we did that together, and it fed my brain. So I'm very technical. So I want to know A to Z how something works. Like, to the point of with the motorcycle, I had to watch a YouTube video to watch somebody take the motorcycle apart, put it together, to see how like my relationship to like when I was shifting, when I was braking, like what was happening. I don't advise anybody doing that, but it's a very long process. So anyway, this motorcycle taught me so much because I was thinking so much about the inner workings of the motorcycle that I wasn't enjoying it. So for the first, like, I don't know, I would say 5 months or so. So it was a few months. I like couldn't get into it. I was like thinking like, when do I kept asking my husband, well, how do I know when to shift? Like, how do I know? He's like, you're just going to know. You have to just be calm. You have to like feel the motorcycle. And I was like, what does that even mean? Like, it's not a horse. It's not going to talk to me. And then I ended up through that experience doing, which I think you're aware of, like the Babes in the Dirt, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. So I did a Babes ride out to Joshua Tree. Just got this motorcycle. I don't know what I'm doing. And if you know anything about motorcycles, so mine is like a bare front. There's nothing to reflect the wind. So you're in it, but you're like, ooh, you're like really in the wind. You feel everything. It's not a cruiser. You're not supposed to go, 200 and something miles on it. But I did. And I arrived there and I literally got off my bike and I was like, people were talking to me. I was like, I just need like 5 or 10 minutes. Like I need to come back down to earth because I'm like vibrating away. Right. But yeah, that motorcycle has taught me, oh man, because it doesn't lie, right? You have to be so present and you can't think about anything. You can't think about work. You can't think about issues, problems, like your to-do list. If you're not there physically and mentally, it's not a good.
Yeah, it's not pretty.
Rubbing down.
How brave of you right away to go out to the Babes Ride Out to Joshua Tree. What motivated you to do that?
Oh man. I'm one of those people. So if someone offers up like a really cool experience, I will be scared as hell, but I'll do it. Like I will cannonball in because I like chase that. I want to learn. I want to like experience stuff. I'm an only child, so I'm okay with like being alone. I actually love being alone. It's where, and there's something about like when someone was like, yeah, we're going to do Babes Ride Out. And it's, all the way to Joshua Tree and all this stuff. And I was like, think of the potential. Like there's so much, right? And these women are phenomenal. I mean, there's something powerful about, because a lot of this stuff, right? We as females, it's not necessarily a gender sport or a gender thing, but naturally there's more of one gender than the other, right? And motorcycle is one of those. A lot of the things that we do are like, a man's world, if you will, business, like, and there was something about knowing that like 3,000 women were going to ride into, Joshua Tree of all places. And they were all going to get there somehow, some way on any type of motorcycle. And I know some of the women that do it and they're just outrageous creatures. So I was like, and yeah, for sure.
Yeah, those are such for everybody out there. Babes Ride Out if you're into dirt bike or into regular street biking, and then Babes in the Dirt if you want to try some dirt biking. They're very fun. Yeah.
It's like a love bubble, right? Like you get there and you get to speak to like so many different walks of lives, but you all have this commonality of like motorcycles or dirt bikes, And
it's fun because you realize you think you're the only one like with fear or being scared to do. And then when you're with a bunch of other and everybody's just sharing how they're fear, then you do leave with that. You get through that like, oh yeah, I got this. And they were scared too. We're all going to get through this together. It's great to overcome fears that way.
Oh my God, amazing. Yeah. And you leave there on such a high, like any of these type of events, right? Where it's like a group of people. It doesn't have to all be women or it doesn't have to all be like anything. But when you're with a group, small or large, that you come together for like one purpose. So you already take away that barrier of like meeting people, right? Because you already like you're there together and you have this like commonality, and it strips away all the things that you could have opposite of each other. So whether it's politics or, our world already is so divided that it's so refreshing to go to these type of things, no matter what industry or what you're into, like to seek out these experiences and just talk to other people. And like, you're like, oh my God, you're scared of that? Like I literally like, it took me 6 months to really feel my motorcycle, and you'll find out that's not uncommon, right? Like, especially depending on how your brain works. And, so I highly recommend doing it on any level.
The other toy that you have, let's talk about your UTV a little bit, because that's my favorite. I love that. So how'd you get into that, and what do you have, and where do you go?
Woo, okay. So this is my new, which now talking about my motorcycle, like I want to go home and hug her and like ride her, but so we have a Can-Am. It's one of the higher levels. I don't know. There's too many letters in it, but it's really fast and it has a lot of power. And so my husband, again, he like gets us into these. So side note, we don't have children. We just have like toys, and that's where we spend our disposable income. But so one day he's like, you know what? I really want to, after going to some dunes with some friends, he was like, hey, we should really get one of these. And I was like, I don't know, like they're, one, they're pricey, two, there's just so much that can happen out in the open road, right? And you're in dunes or a trail. Again, that's my like risk reward brain. And he's just like, no, I really want it. He worked really hard and got us the Can-Am. And straight away it ignited this thing in me where I was like, oh my gosh, like I was online learning everything I could about like the components again. I right away I was like, okay, I learned how to strap it down and get the straps perfect and tie it so it was safe. I took so much pride in like loading it and all the things that most people would just kind of rely on whoever else to do that for them. And so he was kind of like, oh, this is cool. She's really taking like ownership in this, I think, and I almost like had this like crazy, spark in my eye. And so we took it out a couple times and again, it's his, but I've like taken it over. So he has to find a new toy. But we took it out a couple times to like the lake beds or, the river beds. But most recently, we've been taking it to Gorman. So out off the 5, for somebody that don't know, so many trails. I mean, for miles and miles, every level. And I really got into my comfort zone. And I mean, you could go so fast on these. You can go like 60, 80 miles an hour off road, which is insane, by the way. Like, don't do that straight away. But through it taught me how to like, adapt and just really handle really well off road. And so if you take that spark and then going to these off-road, like Baja 1000, we're actually going to San Felipe 250 next week. I'm like, have my heart set on racing. Like I really eventually want to race off-road in the Can-Am. Some point in time, I'm going to do it.
I love it.
Yeah, it's so fun. And you've done that too, right? You've gotten to ride.
Yeah. I mean, minimal, but I grew up on, a lake in Nebraska and we had 4-wheelers and stuff. So that was my first. Yeah. And actually how we got our 4-wheelers, and we went on a trip to Oregon with my grandparents. We drove from Nebraska to Oregon and there were these huge sand dunes. And my grandpa used to have the gift to gab and, talk to everybody. And so he like started talking with one of the families that had the 4-wheeler. So eventually he comes over and he's like, do you kids, want to ride? We're like, yeah, grandpa. So he, got talked with them and they let us. And so we were just hooked. That was like my very first experience, like going up this big dune in Oregon. And we're like, fell in love. And then our parents got us our first 4-wheeler for Christmas that year. And so we rode that around the lake forever. And then being out here, I found out that Polaris had the Glamis event for Halloween where you can go out there and like test drive. So that's kind of all I've done. I just went I've probably been there like 4 years, honestly, just to get to like do the test drive because they let you ride it on the dunes.
Yes, yeah,
those
yeah.
Glamis dunes, if I know you've been, but if people who haven't been there, they're so pretty and so fun to ride on.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's like being in Mars when you're out there. A funny story, well, not funny, but like a learning moment. I'm a very reflective person. So like anytime I'm out there doing anything, there's constantly things to learn. And one of the first times we went to Glamis, so, you saw it. So for people that haven't been there, there's like a highway, right? There's a highway here. So that's how people get into it. But below it, it's all dunes. So you can literally be driving in your just regular car and you can see all these dunes and you can see people riding for the most part until it ends. So my husband has this great idea. He's like, all right, you take the Can-Am, I'll drive the truck with the trailer because we still had to air down to get into the sand and all the stuff. And then we were going to meet up, in theory, where the camping area was. Okay, great. So this is my first time in sand alone, okay, which is a whole nother ball game. I mean, sand is, if you will think of like it has a mind of its own. Like it changes constantly and it's just so unpredictable. So I'm going, I feel good. All of a sudden I can't see him. I was like, all right, so I'm just going to go straight. All of a sudden I'm on the side of like an embankment and it's all sand going down. And sand is a very specific skill set to like shimmy and navigate, or else you're just going to tumble down. I mean, You see the videos on YouTube all the time. People flip all the time. And in my head, I'm like, I'm not flipping. Like, I'm not going to flip. So I panic. again, flashing back to, Half Dome, I always have this moment of like oh shit, like I want out. Like someone, like, where's the Snickers commercial? Like, I just wanted to stop. Get me off this. And I was like, okay, calm your brain. You can do this. Like, you're safe in this like moment. So I have a mantra that I always say, like, if I'm feeling like anxious, in this moment, you are fine. I'm like, in this moment, you are fine. You've got this. So and I'm kind of looking around where I kind of want someone to come save me, like anybody. And then soon enough, I just kind of like feather, I'm like turning it. I'm like, okay, I'm like sweating. I'm just like, oh my God, feather. And then I get down and I get off of it. And I was like shaking, when you get that adrenaline pump. Oh, yeah. And I was like, nobody saw my moment of like, hallelujah. So then I proceed, and all of a sudden there's this huge sand bowl. So if anybody's ever, those take skill as well, because you have to hit it just right, or else again you can tumble. And I was like, what is this? Back to back? Like, come on. I thought it was just going to be a measly little like, okay, see you at camp. And so again, I was like, all right. I kind of sat there for a minute though, and I was like, do I go back? Because I don't know how to maneuver this. Then I just pep talked myself, and I saw other people doing it, and I was like, shh, boom, and I just like gave it all I had. I like pushed the pedal to the metal, got up the other side. Nobody cares, right? Because everyone's doing the same thing. They've been doing it all their lives. They don't know that was your first time, like, coming out of a bowl. Yep. Yes, hell yeah. And my husband's calling me like, where are you? And he said that when I answered, I was like literally shaking, like he can feel through the phone, like he's like, what are you doing? Where are you? And I was like, oh my God, I just like conquered the bowl. And he's like, what? Meanwhile, he's just in the truck, like,
yeah.
I was like,
he's driving, he's cruising along, listening to some tunes while you're doing all that.
Like, you have no idea what I just went through.
Oh God, I could just sit here honestly and listen to your stories forever, which I think we might have to do a part 2 and follow up on some things, get you back. Yeah. Because I do want to talk before I let you go. I want to hear about the Rebelle Rally that you're training for, because I wasn't familiar with this one, and I looked it up after we talked, and I was like, oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So I actually learned about this through one of the women from Babes Right Out, right? So doing events like that, you constantly are in contact with other like-minded people, and you learn about all these cool things. So you can't detach from it. It's not a one and done, right? So the Rebelle Rally is 1,400 miles from Lake Tahoe down to Glamis. So we end in Glamis, off-road. It's a 2-person team, and there's no technology. So you have to do a compass map. You have to map it out every morning, and you're camping every night. And it's a rally. So you're not looking to be the fastest person, which I like, because I like technical things. I want to know, like, I want to use my brain and actually like figure out a strategy, and not just like go fast. Going fast is really fun off-road, but when you do it safely, you know what you're doing. But so the Rebelle Rally is going to be phenomenal, because we actually have to learn how to do all these skill sets. So this Saturday, actually, I'm going out to Gorman to do some of the technical things in the Jeep. So it'll be with the Jeep.
So what are you going to do to practice?
So this weekend, so I don't know if we're going to do it this weekend, but I do have to learn. So we have a lifted Jeep with 37s. The tires are 37, so they're very big. I have to learn how to change those. So I have to make sure that I'm 100% able to sustain our own safety and, off-road. The Rebelle Rally is going to have like a team that's out there in case something happens, but we have to be able to be completely sustainable on our own, just in case. So yeah, I'm going to learn how to change my tire, which I haven't done on the Jeep. I could do it in other vehicles, but not the Jeep yet. I'm going to learn just some different maneuvers that I haven't done yet properly. So sometimes when you're doing off-road, you can like gut it, right? You feel it in your gut how to do things, but I want to actually technically learn how to do some of these skill sets. So like off canter, or maybe like going uphill safely and getting to the other side. So we're going to be practicing that this weekend.
Oh, so I can't wait. I got to have you back after you complete that.
Yeah. So the race is going to be, we didn't make it for this year. So I'm just going to use this time to like practice. We're doing a 4-day training session at the end of April. But it's going to be October 2023 is when I'm actually going to compete in it.
Okay. All right. I'll be calling you up afterwards.
Yes.
How'd it go? Great. What do you have? What are some things that you would tell people who want to get out there and adventuring? Is there any like gear that you like? I know you love Jeeps, but anything that you are just like, oh, you need this, or if you're camping, take this, like you said, the melatonin.
Yeah.
Any things like that you've learned now being out in the wild outdoors so often that you really, your go-tos?
Yeah. So I would say, I mean, you definitely want a comfortable pillow. I mean, I know it sounds like really basic, but something about I can sleep anywhere as long as like I can get my head on something. I have a squishmallow. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like almost like a stuffed animal dog. It's just a head, but it's so squishy and soft and it just works perfectly. So find something comfortable for, I think, your head to get a good night's rest, because typically camping, you're not going to sleep like you normally do at home. Melatonin, absolutely, because you're out and your body is like all of a sudden really excited to be on, a natural cycle, but you're not used to doing that. So if you're only going for a couple nights, melatonin will help you kind of get on that normal cycle to sleep well and deep. I really love Boochcraft, so I don't know if I can say that, but
yep, you can talk all about that.
Yeah, so Boochcraft is like my go-to when we're camping, because it has like this, just, I don't know, it's just the flavor of it. It's refreshing. It's kombucha, but a little bit hard. So it gives you like the best of both worlds. And I would say good shoes and being prepared. So depending on where you're going, you could be, like I said, we will go camping anywhere, anytime, figure it out on the road. But I think it's up to you to be prepared for if you're going to, and what type of terrain you're going to be. Are there, what type of risks are there going to be? Should you have, bear spray with you? Just certain things that you should be prepared off-road, and not rely on local people to save you, because you could, deplete their resources. And also a way to like pack out what you have. So we have a trasharoo, which I love, because if it gets really goopy and nasty, you could just put it on the back of your Jeep and, drive with it on the outside of your vehicle. But any way to just pack out everything and leave places better than, you got there with, because humans can be pretty rude.
Yeah, I know. We got to save these gorgeous places.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you are absolutely fantastic and such an inspiration, and just congratulations on your business. I'm glad everything's going so well. And it's just fun to watch how it's all grown for you over these last few years since we met at the party.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. I look forward to doing something with you sometime.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I'll see you on the trail then.
Yes, for sure. We'll figure out something. Well, thank you guys all for listening again. We'll be here again next week. You can follow us along at Tom Girl TV on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. So follow along, and you can see, hear from wonderful people like Jolene who just inspire you to get out there and start adventuring. Thanks. Bye-bye.